All right, so we got issues here. The Dominion voting machines. This is what they call a big win for honest elections. The judge has now allowed a forensic audit of Dominion voting machines in Michigan. Listen to this. Here's Jenna Ellis.
Yeah, well, the big news coming out of Antrim County, Michigan this morning, Pete, is that a judge actually granted our team access to 22 of the Dominion voting machines for us to conduct a forensic audit. So if you remember, this is the county that had this switch of 6,000 votes from President Trump to Joe Biden, and that was an unexplained and so-called glitch. And so our team is going to be able to go in this morning at about 8:30, and we'll be there for about 8 hours to conduct that forensic examination, and we'll have the results in about 48 hours, and that'll tell us a lot about these machines.
Okay, now picture this, okay? This is going to be an epic week, I'm telling you right now. As this stuff gets to the Supreme Court, Deb, when they start resolving, what is that Georgia election? Can you imagine it wiped it out? Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So stupid.
Oh, it's okay.
This week, okay, if the Supreme Court can weigh in, literally one ruling could wipe out the freaking election, okay? Or this is what could happen. It's going to take them time. So they're going to say, we're going to push the pause button here because we got enough evidence of fraud. And I think that's what Jenna Ellis and Rudy Giuliani and everybody is trying to present, okay? Oh, waiting to present is the factual, like hard evidence to the Supreme Court saying this is what happened, okay? And all of these other judges are corrupt. We tried to get through, and basically they wouldn't even allow us what they call due process because they were just dismissing cases. And we didn't even present any evidence. Look what happened in Nevada. They submitted, how many? 8,000 pages of evidence?
Yes.
And the judge said, we don't need to look at that. That's not legitimate. It's not viable. Huh?
I know, right?
And just wiped it out. How could you make a ruling like that without looking at the evidence? It was overwhelming. It's like 20 binders full of evidence. Guess who's coming on today, ladies and gentlemen? Dr. Nick Begich will be joining me here in about
so excited
10
about
minutes.
that?
Yes, very, very exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Nick Begich is going to come on. We're going to talk about a lot of things like we normally do. It'll be a 30-minute segment. It'll be exciting, and we will continue to cover it. Now, Rudy Giuliani, I'm going to play this. I got enough time to play it. Rudy Giuliani was on Marie Bartiromo's show today.
Welcome back. This week, dozens of witnesses testified at 5 separate election fraud hearings in 4 different states. Their allegations ranged from bogus and backdated ballots to tabulation errors and voter intimidation. Here's a sampling of testimonies from Michigan on Wednesday.
Instead of discarding, they were just rescanning, counting ballots 9 to 10 times. Counting votes 9 to 10 times.
So they were counting the same ballot, the same vote, 9 or 10 times?
Yes, sir.
From these duplicate ballots I observed, none of them were for Trump. None of them. And from the other 2 shifts or 2 rounds that we did earlier, only 1 ballot that I witnessed from a duplicate was for Trump.
When I asked one lady, where did you get trained? She said, trained for what? Because they didn't know what they were there for. Their only job, I could tell there, was to block the GOP people from challenging or intimidate them and get them out.
President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, crisscrossed the country this week, presenting evidence in Arizona, Michigan, and Georgia. He joins us now this morning. Good morning, Rudy. Good to see you today.
Good morning, Maria.
What a week you had, and all of that testimony. Pretty explosive commentary coming out of those witnesses. Rudy, give us a status check. You've challenged these 6 swing states. Where are we in each of these states?
Well, I think Georgia, we're probably the furthest along. Georgia, of course, had the bombshell evidence of the tape recording of the election center with everyone chased out about 2 in the morning, locked down, 5 people left. Luckily, the cameras were on. They didn't know it. And then they took ballots out hidden under a table all day. And then they spent the rest of the night counting the secret ballots. And clearly secret, phony ballots, in which they excluded all Republicans, all Democrats, all law enforcement. And I think that ended up being about 148,000 to 7,000. 148,000 for Biden, 7,000 for Trump. So you get a pretty good idea of how they cheated. Georgia also has numerous situations where ballots weren't inspected, ballots were backdated, dead people voting, people from out of state voting, illegal immigrants voting. There are enough illegal immigrants that voted that would change the course of the election. They can't balance the number of ballots they have against the number of ballots that were returned by about 11 or 12,000. That alone would overturn the election. So the state legislature there is disgusted. And they have started a petition to hold their own session, which they're allowed to do under the Constitution. They're the first legislature to do this now. This is a constitutional role that the founding fathers gave to our legislatures. They're the ones who are supposed to select the president, not the governors, not the Board of Elections. They're the ones who have the constitutional obligation to decide on the electors. So in Georgia, they're going to do that. Michigan is considering the same thing, and they're not quite as far along, but they're drafting something right now, and so is Arizona. So those three are three in which they could very well end up in front of the legislature to decide who the electors are. Wisconsin is a lawsuit where Wisconsin has a very strict absentee ballot, and it basically says if you don't have an application for the ballot doesn't count. And there are some 50 or 60,000 ballots without applications. They would have to be thrown out, and that would change the election. So that's where we are right now.
You said you found serious issues with processing of ballots, absentee ballots in Wisconsin.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, what you had in Wisconsin is the same thing that you had every place else, except they have this additional law where you have to have an application. They excluded Republican poll watchers from watching absentee ballots being counted and mail-in ballots being counted. They exclude Republican poll watchers from the polls. They engage in backdating ballots. Several witnesses testified how they were trained how to backdate ballots. They registered people who weren't registered under different names. Each one of them has, in one degree or another, almost the same pattern of activity, one a little bit more than others. This was a pattern that was set by somebody in Washington because everybody else carried it out exactly in the same way. And they did it in the crooked cities. They didn't do it everywhere. They did it in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Atlanta. They went to places where there's a lot of corruption, and the courts are not exactly the fairest. Let's put it that way.
So you think somebody in Washington directed this and directed the big cities in the big swing states to do these tweaks, whether it is the processing of ballots incorrectly or harvesting ballots, et cetera? Who did this? I mean, that would suggest this is organized, developed. Who is in charge? Who directed this then?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't know who is in charge of it. All I can tell you is it looks like a very well planned, very well executed situation. For example, at the same time at 3:30 in the morning on the night of the election, right after the election, a truck pulled into the back of the center in Detroit and delivered 100,000 phony ballots that all got counted for Biden. At the very same time, in Atlanta, they threw the people out of the center, they closed the doors, they went under the counter and brought out about 70 or 80,000 ballots and counted those phony ballots. Some of them counting them 6 and 7 times. All that's on tape. Happened at the same time in 2 different places. You can't tell me that wasn't part of the pattern.
Rudy, this is pretty extraordinary, and obviously these are very, very serious charges. How come the media does not report that you have this evidence? I mean, we're looking at the videos of people pulling ballots out from under a table. We're looking at the affidavits that you are presenting. And yet, I mean, the Wall Street Journal this morning, the title, Trump uses rally for Georgia Senate candidates to push unsupported claims of voting fraud. And we're looking at video right now of the people in Georgia, which you just referred to, that in 2 in the morning they said, everybody clear out the room, and yet you've got 4 individuals here that are pulling suitcases out from under a table. Why is it that the media continues to report that there's unsupported evidence here when every day you're out talking about these situations?
Maria, I wish I knew the answer to that. Part of it is bias. Part of it is corruption. Part of it's laziness. Part of it is just inexplicable. How you can say this is unsupported when there are now tape after tape after tape. There are tapes of those same women taking USB drives and getting information out of the machines illegally. Those were played yesterday in Georgia, and nobody bothers to play that. I mean, there are 1,000 affidavits. 1,000 affidavits. This is a massive fraud all throughout the country. There are 1,000 affidavits of people who observed a fraudulent act.
Yep. It sounds like you're counting on the state legislatures to recognize this. What about the Supreme Court? I know that Congressman Mike Kelly's suit has reached Justice Alito. Tell us where that stands and when we might get reaction or rulings from the Supreme Court with regard to the Pennsylvania case.
Well, I think the Pennsylvania case probably is a week away from being put together and argued. I don't know when it'll get decided. That case challenges the definitions and the changes in the definitions that Pennsylvania made in its law and the way that it applied it, the way it denied constitutional rights. I think it's a very good case.